All right, we're here at Cave Cricket Recording Studio in Metro Atlanta. And we've got a great studio in general. And the greatest thing of all, of the many great things about it, is the gentleman you see right there, Mr. Billy Gewin. If he doesn't mind me sharing his name, he's an awesome musician, very excellent producer, excellent songwriter. Check out his stuff. And excellent studio here.
Jack, he's sailing all around the world tonight. Well, they know he's out.
Billy, say a little bit about yourself.
Well, I started using recording studios when I was a teenager, playing in bands, and we started writing a bit. And then I started writing my own songs, and I had to take guitar lessons. I played bass in the rock bands before, and eventually I started having to record myself, and rather than having 5 people to pay for the cost of that, I had to cover it all myself, and it got expensive. So I thought, well, I think I'll get some equipment and learn how to record at home. And then I started recording my friends, and then people started paying me to do it, and eventually I quit my day job and just started doing this stuff full time. So that's
Billy is not only a great engineer, but he's a producer. He's a great arranger. He'll play anything you want. He has great ideas and input. Billy, you said something about modern studios of today versus some of the vintage studios. What was that comment you were making?
We were talking about the Beatles, and I probably made a leap, but I'm sure they would have liked to have had every one of the members of their staff, including George Martin. But we were just saying that they didn't have the best equipment back then, and with the exception of maybe having a big room to record an orchestra in. If you gave the Beatles the chance to work in some studio like this with modern equipment and all the synthesizers that can do what they can do, and the ability to edit their parts properly and all that, versus 1964 Abbey Road, they might pick a place like this.
Well, that was probably 8-track maybe, Abbey Road.
I think they had an 8-track recorder, so they had a lot of limits back then.
Yeah. I think that's such a good point. When I listen to old albums, as great as the music is, sometimes I can hear the difference in audio quality, and there is something to be said for modern technology. And Billy, you want to say a little bit about your setup or anything, or?
Well, you can pan around the room here. So
okay, you've got a bunch of instruments.
Basses on the wall. We got some keyboard stuff here.
And you won't see Billy play a 4-string bass. I tried one of those 5-string basses one time and gave up after about 2 minutes, but he makes it sound awesome.
You have to learn how to mute the extra string. It was a little leap for me. I do have a couple of 4-string basses around here, though, but I always have to tune the E string down to get to some.
You pretty much play 5-string bass.
Usually, yeah.
I mean, I know you can play a 4-string.
But if anyone says you need one and can't get by with 4, just look at Victor Wooten. So then down here we've got a little ISO room sometimes. That's where Dave did a lot of his initial parts.
And that would be like where maybe the singer sits, and then you've got kind of the big room for drums.
The so-called big room in this little spaceship space.
I'll come through here.
We stuff a bass player and a drummer in there with some frequency.
And my project, which you'll be hearing a little bit about, is called See the Light, and this is where the drummer and the bass player sat in here. And we got a great sound, and we were able to work together as a unit. And this studio was such a big part of that. Just very nice. Instruments all over the walls.
Well, the big ship sails and the wind is fine. What an 18-pounder, what a ship of the line. Sail into view, sail right on through. You're the finest sailor that I ever knew. Well, the sun is over the yard on, boys, let's go. Pass the rum on down, 'cause it's the best of old Mexico.
And Billy, you've played with practically everybody in Atlanta, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, there's a lot of people in Atlanta making trouble, so
No, he's a very in-demand player. Not only on bass, but he's a great guitarist and keyboardist. And Billy, what audio DAW? Is it DAW, Digital Audio Workstation? Did you say you use Sonar? Is that right?
This is now called Cakewalk.
Cakewalk.
It keeps changing hands, and I have Pro Tools as well, and have flirted with some of the other ones, but this one is the one I like the best, and after a while, of course, you develop a relationship with whatever you're working with.
Absolutely. Do you think that all the DAWs are kind of the same?
Well, I think they're all capable of the same sound quality, but I think, Pro Tools really needs to get that undo for deleting a track worked out. People have been asking for that for over 20 years, and they really ought to
deleting a
that.
track.
Yeah, you delete a track by accident, you can't undo it. That's pretty basic feature.
What do you think of Eddie Van Halen saying Pro Tools has ruined rock and roll? Do you agree with that, or?
Well, I think it makes it possible to get a decent sounding recording with people who don't necessarily play very well. But I don't know if it's ruined it. I think it's made it possible for a lot of singer-songwriters who maybe aren't the best players or singers to get a good song out there.
Right. No, I've decided there are a lot of advantages with modern technology, and I guess it's all in how you use it, right?
I think so. Jack White talks about that. You got to be really responsible with it, but
you can do anything with. There's nothing you could do 40 years ago that you can't do today. Is that right?
I would say that's true.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like we've lost any functionality or capabilities with modern equipment.
Yeah, you just have a lot of maybe more amateurish musicians and singers in the game, and they could, like I say, can make a decent sounding recording. But most of the people who made hit records that we all loved were very young when they did it, and most of them couldn't play that well. Teenagers just learning to write, really just learning to play.
Right.
Didn't have a lot of experience with their instruments, and but also too, that's why you had the Wrecking Crew playing on a lot of bands' records instead of the band, right?
Hundreds and hundreds.
What's more honest? I'm not so sure.
Yeah, and the Funk Brothers or Muscle Shoals, and
right.
In Atlanta, I think the Atlanta rhythm section in Southern Tracks was kind of like the Atlanta Wrecking Crew, and they just decided to call themselves the Atlanta Rhythm Section.
That's a great studio. I got to go in there and work a little bit before they tore it down.
Yeah, Southern Tracks is torn down.
Yeah.
And Billy, you've done some work in Nashville, right? And you
just a little bit, yeah.
And your guitar playing was lauded over some of the hotshot Nashville guys. Do you want to tell us that story? I know you're humble, but tell us anyway. What the hell?
One of the clients who had used the studio here, had some backing and got a chance to go use Blackbird Studio. So we worked a couple of very long days over there. And, the goal was just get as much recorded as we could over there and then bring the rest of it, bring whatever we didn't finish back here to complete. And so we got to use Studio A, which has a really awesome, giant basketball gym sized room for recording drums or an orchestra or whatever you want.
Blackbird Studio.
Yeah. And they have a repository, warehouses full of, every preamp, instrument, drums, keyboards, guitar amps, everything. All kinds of amazing old vintage stuff, and they've got an on-staff engineer who maintains it, and we had 2 engineers in the studio, and they'd spent their lives working with equipment like that and knew it inside and out. So it was really fun to pick the guy's brain. Ernesto was the guy's name. He was a super nice guy and great engineer. So we hired a Nashville guitarist and a keyboard player, and A-list
session guitarist did the original tracks, right?
And we tracked it all pretty much live. We stopped to overdub a couple guitar parts or whatever. But the one thing, the guy there had to do his parts quickly while we were all recording live, and so he probably played it a little more conservatively just to not make any mistakes and have to stop the band, and whereas when we come back here, we can take all the parts we like that he used, and in some cases the singer-songwriter asked me to take another crack at some of the guitar solos, and he picked mine.
So Billy's being modest, but his guitar playing replaced the Nashville session player because he's a great guitarist and a great studio player.
Sadie the lady, the belle of the ball, you are are the fairest of all. Through summer and winter and springtime and fall, it's Sadie the belle of the ball. Well, Sadie the lady looks lovely.
Player. Billy, you were talking about all the instruments and everything. Do you think to some extent that's hype with, all the preamps? And I've watched some of these other videos and they talk about how you've got to have all these different preamps, and to some extent it seems almost like a sales thing, or people, is that a lot of hype, do you think? All the how much stuff do you really need? All the what do you think?
Well, I've gotten to work, like I say, at Blackbird, and then I got to work with Martin Levan at his studio over in Wales in the UK. And, there's every preamp, microphone, anything you want, they've got it.
Yeah.
And, in some cases, we would A/B stuff with and without the expensive preamp or whatever. And, there's always that microphone or maybe something, if you know how to get a special sound out of it, that'd be nice to have. But usually I would come away from the bigger studios not wanting a bigger room to record in and not wanting any extra fancy equipment. I would just come away with some new software that I wanted to buy.
Right.
And, it was, I remember recording an accordion with Martin Levan, and he had I think it was just an Avalon 2 preamp that he liked.
Right.
And we A-B'd it with and without, and, we actually ended up skipping it.
Yeah. Well, maybe it's like fine wine. Sometimes subtle differences are expensive differences, and if they get too subtle and too expensive, they're not worth it, I don't think. That's been my...
The one thing, we were having a conversation earlier. I used to have a big analog mixing board, and now you could maybe camera down on it. That has been replaced by this little contraption at the bottom of the rack here, and all the buttons and knobs are now on screen. And the one great advantage of that, if there are detractors, is that none of those knobs ever get dirty. There's no...
Right.
And, I'm sure any engineer has got a story where they got to the end of the session and realized, there was distortion on the snare drum mic or the overhead mic or something like that.
Right.
And had to call the band back in to do it again or make use of the other mic channels that were recorded or something like that. And that is one problem you just don't have anymore.
Yeah.
You can have as many headphone mixes as you want. And so also you can save all your settings and recall them for later. So that's a great, huge advantage. And also to be able to take a mix and look at it 2 months later, everything is recalled exactly as it was, and you can, tweak things. That right there is a huge step forward. I think any engineer would tell you they prefer that over whatever vintage preamps they have. But, I don't mean to speak for them. But,
no, I
some good, some bad. I'm in possession of some tube mic preamps, but I choose not to use them.
right.
I'd rather just get the microphone.
Maybe they're more trouble than they're worth, even if they're good. They
Well,
might
I'd
not
always
be.
just say whatever bad decisions I'm going to make, I'd prefer to make them on playback rather than on the way in, so I
Right.
can undo my bad work.
You can always fix something, but you can't fix it if it's wrong.
If you screw it up on the way in.
Yeah,
you suck at it.
And while the daylight turns to gold, we're gonna toast our Captain Bold. Lucky Jack, did you know that your story is to be told?
Have you ever recorded with tape, Billy?
Oh, yeah.
What do you think of that?
Well, we always loved it. I used, when I was a teenager, we went into a 24-track, 2-inch tape studio. And, we're talking 1990-ish.
Right.
15 minutes of tape was $150 back then, which is probably a lot more. I mean, it's got to be $400 in today's dollars.
Yeah.
You know, I don't miss that. Of course, if anything happened to the tape, you know, you're in bad shape.
There's a romance to tape, but I'm trying to think. It seems like it might be kind of a pain in the ass if you're used to digital now, because there's just
Well, it definitely is a pain
you don't
in the
have to
ass.
rewind and you know,
Yeah, rewinding.
find. I don't know. Is that
You know, it seems like the worst part. Those 24-track tape machines, they had this big console that sat on almost like a drum stand. And if you wanted to punch in and you were recording by yourself, you kind of had to do it with your toe.
yeah, yeah. The limitations of yeah. Well, and Billy, this studio is called Cave Cricket. Is that right? Is that now, do you mind? Do you have any contact information or anything, or do you have a website or?
Sure. You can look me up, Billy Gewin, GEWIN.com.
BillyGewin.com.
That's a terribly out of date but still functional website for the
Well,
studio.
I've worked with Billy on a number. We've played together a lot of times, but I've used his services and I highly recommend them. They're just awesome, and he'll not only does a great job recording, but he'll help you make your music be the best it can be. So special thanks to Billy Gewin for everything, but for visiting us with us today and sharing some of his expertise on this awesome studio. You want to say anything in conclusion, Billy?
Nope. Thanks for using the studio. It's been great to hear your awesome
See the
songs that
light.
you're playing.
See the Light. That's coming out. It was recorded here, and Billy's got some awesome stuff too. I'll put a link to some of his recordings. Great songwriter and producer
Hey, thank
on his own stuff as well as everybody else's. Thanks, Billy.